He gave a pretty girl a lift, not knowing that would be the end of his journey and the end of his life. It was just another road trip, another hot day on the Benin Expressway. A kind man, a trusted heart, and a stranger with a smile too soft to suspect. But behind that smile was a plan, a text, a trap. This is the story of Ifeanyi Chukwuemeka, a father, a husband, a man who made one innocent choice. That cost him everything. What happens next will leave you speechless. Watch how the story unfolds. The sun rose gently over Asaba, casting a soft gold hue across the horizon. It was just past 7 a.m. when Ifeanyi turned the key in the ignition of his silver Toyota Highlander. The engine purred to life like it always did, reliable, smooth, just like him. He had a meeting in Benin by noon, and as always, he preferred to drive himself. No escorts, no drivers, just his music, his thoughts, and the open road. At 42, Ifeanyi was everything most men wanted to be. A successful building contractor, a loving father of two, and a husband who still texted his wife, "I love you," every morning. He was known for his kindness, his big heart, and, most especially, his generosity. Too generous, some would say. The road between Asaba and Benin was familiar to him. He had taken it 100 times. It cut through sleepy towns, vast farmlands, and thick forests. He liked the peace of it, the space to think, to dream. As he drove, he hummed along to an old Sunny Neji track, tapping his fingers on the wheel. His thoughts drifted between the meeting ahead and the surprise he planned for his daughter's birthday next week. Life to him felt like it was just beginning to make perfect sense. Then he saw her, a lone figure by the roadside just past Okpanam Junction. A young woman, mid-20s maybe, standing by the edge of the road, her hair tied back, a small handbag dangling from her shoulder. Her peach blouse clung to her skin in the rising heat. Her eyes darted up as his car approached, full of pleading. He slowed instinctively. "Should I stop?" he asked himself aloud. She didn't look dangerous, just stranded, lost. Maybe she had missed a bus. Maybe she was heading to Benin too. As his car rolled to a stop beside her, she stepped closer, her voice soft and grateful. "Please, sir, I'm going to Usulu. My transport left me. I've been here for over an hour." He smiled warmly and unlocked the door. "Hop in. No woman should be left alone on this kind of road." She smiled back, a smile so innocent, so calm, so deceptive. The door closed. The journey continued. But that was the moment his fate changed forever. She settled into the front seat, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. Her perfume was faint but sweet, like wildflowers after rain. Ifeanyi glanced at her briefly, trying not to stare. She was stunning. Light brown skin, full lips, eyes that held a kind of warmth that made you drop your guard without knowing why. "I'm Sandra," she said with a small smile as she buckled her seatbelt. "Ifeanyi," he replied. "Nice to meet you, Sandra. So what happened to your transport?" She sighed, shaking her head. "The bus I boarded in Asaba broke down. The driver said we should wait for another vehicle. But I had to get to Benin today. Urgent family issue. So I came down and started looking for help." "You're a lifesaver, honestly." He nodded, sympathetic. "This country, transport wahala everywhere." She chuckled. It was soft and graceful. They began talking. Small talk at first. He learned she was studying accounting at a polytechnic in Benin and had come to Asaba for a quick visit to her aunt. She spoke confidently, like someone raised to be careful with her words. But what Ifeanyi didn't see, what no one could have seen, was the phone hidden in the corner of her handbag and the message she had just typed, quietly when he wasn't looking. "We're moving. Silver Highlander, heading toward Abu Dua now. Be ready. Message sent. Delivery confirmed. Are you married? She asked, breaking the silence again. He smiled. Yes, 2 kids. My wife's probably at home right now making a fuss about my driving myself. That's sweet, she said, turning her head to the window. You look like a kind man. Kind. That word again. They passed a few more towns. Ifeanyi offered her bottled water. She accepted it. Thanked him again. Somewhere between Abudu and Ugbokuli, she leaned back and said, Please, sir, I'm really sorry, but I'm pressed. Can we stop for just 1 minute? I promise it won't take long. All right, he said, already slowing down. You sure it's safe here? She nodded. I've passed this place before. It's fine. He pulled off to the side and unknowingly parked right where her demons were waiting. The car hissed gently to a stop on the dusty shoulder of the highway. Tall grasses swayed on both sides of the road, and in the distance, the thick line of the bush looked like a green wall, silent, watchful. Just a minute, Sandra said again with a sweet smile, already opening the door. All right, be careful, Ifeanyi replied, leaning back in his seat. She stepped out with grace and walked toward the edge of the bush. Her phone was already back in her hand. With her body turned slightly away from the car, she tapped out a final message. Here. Then she dropped the phone inside her bag and crouched low, pretending to ease herself. Ifeanyi turned on the radio, searching for signal. Nothing but static. He glanced at his wristwatch. 10:12 a.m. Still enough time to get to Benin before the meeting. He wasn't in a rush. He looked through the windshield again. Sandra hadn't come out yet. He craned his neck a little to check. Still nothing. Then, a sudden rustle, a flicker of movement. Before he could blink, 2 men burst from the bush, guns raised, eyes hard. What the hell? Ifeanyi started, scrambling for the gear. But a third man was already at the driver's side. The glass shattered with a deafening crack. The barrel of a gun pointed straight at his face. Come down, one barked. Now! Ifeanyi froze, his hands trembling. Please, please! Take my phone! Take the car! One of them grabbed him by the collar and yanked him out. He tried to run. Adrenaline surged. He took 2 steps, 3, then a loud bang. The pain hit like a hammer. A bullet tore through his leg. He screamed and collapsed, face first into the red sand. Sandra stood up from her crouched position, eyes cold. No more soft voice. No more sweet smile. He's down, she said calmly. Let's move. The 3 men dragged Ifeanyi by the arms. His blood left a red trail behind them as they disappeared into the thick bush, leaving behind only his abandoned car, an empty road, and the sound of crickets returning to the silence. The forest swallowed them whole. With each step, the ground beneath Ifeanyi's dragging body grew softer, darker. Thorny shrubs scratched his arms, dry leaves crunched underfoot, and every time his wounded leg brushed against a root or rock, he let out a cry of pain. Shut up! One of the kidnappers barked, kicking him. Ifeanyi gasped. The pain was unbearable. His trousers were soaked in blood, and his head spun from the heat, the fear, and the loss of blood. They trekked for what felt like an eternity, moving deeper and deeper into the thick bush. The air was heavy with the scent of damp soil and rotting leaves. Mosquitoes buzzed around them, like vultures sensing a dying prey. Finally, they arrived at a small, hidden clearing. There was a makeshift shelter, wooden sticks covered in black tarpaulin. Nearby, 2 other gang members were waiting. One of them, stocky and bald, was boiling water over a fire. He looked up and grinned. Now this one be the new catch? He asked, eyeing Ifeanyi like meat. Sandra stepped forward, removing her sandals. Her face was now stone cold. her eyes empty. Yes, she said. Nathis Mumu slow down for road. The bald man laughed. All these men way they think with their trousers. Easy money. They tied Ifeanyi's hands with rope and shoved him against a tree. Blood continued to drip from his leg. His breathing was shallow. His shirt was soaked with sweat and dirt. But the worst part wasn't the pain. It was the realization. This wasn't random. It was planned. That girl, Sandra. She had set him up from the beginning. He stared at her, eyes wide with disbelief. Why are you doing this? She didn't even flinch. Instead, she picked up his phone, unlocked it using his trembling thumb, and handed it to the bald man. Call his people, she said. Tell them we want 50 million, or he dies. And just like that, Ifeanyi's journey went from a peaceful drive to a nightmare without breaks. He was no longer a man on a road trip. He was now a prisoner. The sun was at its peak now, high above the trees, but not a single ray found its way into the forest belly. Only shadows, dense, suffocating shadows. Ifeanyi's leg throbbed like it had a heartbeat of its own. The bleeding had slowed, but the wound smelled faintly of iron and dampness. Infected, surely. He shifted, tied to the tree, and let out a groan. It'd go better if you just cooperate, the bald one said. His name was Django. He was clearly the leader, calm, cruel, and always chewing cola nut. Django held the phone in one hand, a short whip in the other. Who we they call first, wife or brother? Please, my wife, Ifeanyi muttered through chapped lips. Sandra passed him a small bottle of water. He drank with shaky hands, staring at her. She looked away, pretending not to notice. Django dialed. It rang. Hello, came a woman's voice. Sweet, worried. Django switched to Igbo, cold and sharp. We have your husband. 50 million or he dies. No police. No delay. The scream that followed tore through Ifeanyi's soul. Ngozi! Ngozi! I'm here! I'm alive! He cried, struggling against the ropes. Please, listen! A hard slap silenced him. You talk when we say talk, barked one of the younger boys, raising a plank. The call ended. Django turned to Sandra. You sure say this one get money? Sandra shrugged. He said he was a contractor. Family car. Wristwatch no original. Money day. That night they wrapped Ifeanyi's wound in old cloth, poured hot palm wine on it to sterilize it, and threw him a piece of bread. He didn't eat. He just stared at the dark canopy above, the stars barely visible. He thought of his children, his wife's face, the way she always waited at the gate when he returned home late. He imagined her now, weeping, running from one neighbor to the other, calling everyone, begging. He wanted to believe he'd make it out, but in his heart, a terrible fear had taken root, and in the shadows of that forest, death sat watching, waiting. The days blurred into each other like smudged ink. Sunlight came and went, but Ifeanyi barely noticed anymore. He had lost track of time, of hope, of how much blood had soaked into the forest floor beneath him. Every breath he took came with pain. His leg was swollen, the skin around the wound turning black and hot. Infection had set in. He shivered in the heat, fevered and delirious. The kidnappers no longer saw him as a man. They saw him as a product, a price tag, a bargaining chip. 50 million naira, Django had shouted into the phone that morning. Or we cut off one of his fingers and send it to you as greeting. Ngozi, Ifeanyi's wife, sobbed on the other end. Please, please, we're trying. We've raised 12 million. We're calling everyone. Please don't hurt him. Django ended the call and spat on the ground. Tell your people to move faster, he said to Ifeanyi. We don't feed ghosts. Sandra watched from a distance, arms folded. Her role had ended days ago. Now she barely spoke, but her eyes lingered sometimes, longer than they should. Perhaps she felt something, or maybe it was just curiosity. That evening, a younger gang member named Bullet brought Ifeanyi a plate of soaked Gary and sardine. Ifeanyi's hands trembled as he reached for it. "Why are you doing this?" he asked, voice barely audible. Bullet scoffed. "No rich people like you, they make our lives hard. We no go suffer till we die. One life, one chance." Ifeanyi tried to speak again, but his throat failed him. His body was burning up. He leaned his head back against the tree and closed his eyes. Images flashed through his mind. His son's last drawing, his daughter singing, "Daddy's home," whenever he came back from a trip. His wife's arms, the warmth of their bed. He wanted to live. He wanted to fight. But his body, though, was giving up. And somewhere in the thick night, the forest echoed with crickets, as if it already knew. This road would not end well. Ngozi hadn't slept in days. Her eyes were red, her voice hoarse, her hair wrapped in a scarf she hadn't changed since the call came. The living room was filled with people, neighbors, church members, family, friends, all trying to help, all whispering the same questions. How much have they raised? What's the police saying? Is he still alive? 12 million had come in the first 2 days, from friends, relatives, even loans from the bank. Then came another 7. A prominent pastor donated 2 million after hearing her cry on a radio show. But they were still short, and the clock was ticking. The kidnappers weren't patient. Each call came with more threats, more violence. At one point, they sent a voice note filled with Ifeanyi's groans, a slap, and Django yelling, "You think we're joking? We'll kill him and still collect ransom from someone else." Ngozi collapsed after that call. Her brother Emeka took over the negotiations. His voice was calm but firm. "Listen, if you kill him, you get nothing. You don't want a corpse. You want cash. Let us work." Django laughed bitterly. "You have 48 hours. If I no see full payment, I'll cut his ear and post am." Back in the bush, Ifeanyi lay curled like a broken man. His leg had gone numb, the infection spreading fast. His lips cracked, and his skin looked gray. He no longer fought, no longer pleaded. He just whispered prayers into the wind. "God, please help me see my children one last time." On the 5th day, the final pledge came in, 15 million from a business partner. Total, 50 million. Ngozi wept as she packed the cash into a black duffel bag, guarded by 2 plainclothes officers. They arranged the exchange, following the kidnapper's instructions precisely. It was a narrow, lonely footpath near a bridge outside Ihor. The bag was dropped at 3 p.m. No one spoke. No police interference. No mistakes. At 4:16 p.m., a message came. "He's at mile 7, bush path. Come fast." They raced there in a convoy, hearts pounding, hope rising. They found him, but not as they expected. The bush path at mile 7 was eerily silent. Ngozi, flanked by her brother and 2 officers, ran ahead, stumbling through the thorny undergrowth. A few steps in, they saw him. Ifeanyi. He was lying by the base of a tree, body slumped, eyes half open. His shirt was drenched in sweat and blood, flies hovering around the festering wound on his leg. Ngozi screamed and dropped to her knees beside him. "Ifeanyi! Ifeanyi! It's me! I'm here!" His lips moved, but no sound came out. One of the officers quickly called for backup while the others helped lift his frail body. Emeka grabbed him by the shoulders, trying to support his head. "Stay with us, bro. Please, stay with us." Ifeanyi blinked slowly. His eyes searched the faces around him, then fixed on Ngozi. A faint, ghostly smile touched his lips. "Ngozi," he murmured, You came. Yes, yes, I'm here, she sobbed. You're going to be okay. We've paid them. You're safe now. But it was already too late. His body was burning up. The fever had consumed him from the inside. His leg was swollen and black, the bullet wound never treated, never cleaned. The infection had poisoned his blood. As the ambulance arrived, his breathing grew shallower. They placed him on a stretcher, connected a bag of saline, and sped toward the nearest general hospital. Ngozi held his hand tightly the entire way, praying, crying, begging God not to take him. But halfway through the journey, the grip in her hand slackened. Ifeanyi's eyes rolled back. His chest fell still. No, 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 please! Ngozi screamed, shaking him. The paramedic placed 2 fingers on his neck, then gently looked at her. I'm sorry, he whispered. He's gone. The words shattered everything. Ngozi wailed. Emeka punched the side of the ambulance in rage. The driver, eyes wet, drove on in silence. 50 million had been paid, but all it bought was a lifeless body wrapped in sorrow. The funeral was held 3 days later. A quiet compound in Asaba overflowed with mourners. Men in dark suits, women in wrappers soaked with tears, and children who didn't understand why the air felt so heavy. Ngozi sat by the coffin, unmoving. Her hands rested on her lap, her eyes fixed on the polished wooden casket where her husband now lay. She hadn't said a word since the doctor's pronouncement, not even when they brought the body home, not when she picked the burial clothes, not when the priest arrived. She just stared. Their 8-year-old daughter, Amaka, stood beside her, clutching her small purse. Her voice broke the silence. Mummy, when will Daddy wake up? The question tore through Ngozi's soul like a blade. She looked at her daughter with tears streaming down her cheeks and opened her mouth to answer, but nothing came. What do you tell a child when her hero is never coming home? Emeka stepped forward to give the tribute. My brother Ifeanyi was a good man, he began, voice cracking. He was kind to strangers. He helped people even when it wasn't convenient. And in the end, that same kindness cost him his life. There were muffled sobs in the crowd. He gave a stranger a lift, and that decision led him into the hands of murderers. A woman he thought was lost was the bait. This could happen to anyone, but let this be a lesson, his voice broke, that in today's world, not every outstretched hand is in need. Some are traps, painted with pretty smiles. At the burial site, sand hit the casket like thunder. Each shovel of earth felt like a punch to the chest. Ngozi nearly collapsed. Friends held her on both sides. Amaka clung to her uncle, eyes wide, not fully understanding why everyone was crying so hard. From a distance, news crews stood quietly. The story had spread. Businessman kidnapped by beautiful hitchhiker. People whispered. Some blamed Ifeanyi. Others blamed the government. But no explanation could ease the pain, because at the end of it all, a good man was gone, and nothing would ever bring him back. Weeks passed. The world moved on, as it always does. But in the small home in Asaba, time stood still. Ngozi barely ate. Amaka cried herself to sleep most nights. Ifeanyi's side of the bed remained untouched. His cologne bottle still on the dresser, his favorite brown sandals still by the door. And then the news came. Sandra had been caught. During a raid on a notorious criminal hideout outside Auchi, she was arrested alongside members of the kidnapping ring. Guns, stolen phones, and several ATM cards were recovered. Her face flashed across the evening news, calm, defiant, emotionless. Ngozi sat in front of the television, watching. When the reporter asked Sandra why she did it, why she lured men to their deaths, she simply said, I needed money. Men always think they're saving someone. I gave them what they wanted. The chilling coldness in her voice sent shivers through every listener. The public was outraged. Social media erupted with calls for swift justice. Death penalty, some shouted. Life in prison, others argued. But for Ngozi, nothing would change what had already been taken. One morning she visited her husband's grave alone. She stood silently, then knelt beside the headstone, running her fingers over the engraved words. Ifeanyi Chukwuemeka, a loving husband, father and friend, taken by the kindness he never stopped showing. Her voice cracked as she whispered, I'm sorry, I couldn't save you. But I promise, I'll raise our children with your heart. As she walked away, the wind picked up gently, rustling the nearby leaves. She looked back one last time and smiled through her tears, because in that stillness she felt him, watching, protecting, and warning others with the silence of his story.